This clip is sponsored by American Mobile. If you're a nurse interested in traveling, visit americanmobile.com to get started. So, logistically, for people that are maybe interested in looking at endoscopy, what is your day? Like, how do you normally set up your day? What does that look like?
It depends where I am. So, pretty much every day of the week, I do something different. Whether that's I'm charged a lot of my shifts, so I can be charged in pre-op, I can be charged in recovery, in a luminal area, which is our more routine procedures, or in our therapeutic area, which is our more advanced procedures. So depending on the area, it kind of switches up what I'm doing. Pre-op and PACU, though, is essentially supporting my nurses, as well as anesthesia. So making sure everyone has the things they need to perform their tasks for the day, or if they are unable to do something on their own, being that like extra resource for them. So I like that role because it's just constantly changing depending on what people need. Whereas if I'm in the other areas in the procedural side, I'm more so delving in with the physicians, fellows, nurse practitioners, or PAs, trying to figure out a plan for the inpatient that are sick and need to come down while also still supporting your nurses in the room. But you're more so working to collaborate a plan for the day, reaching out to inpatient nurses to figure out what else the patient has going on. Can they come down for the procedure, things like that. So it just depends. But I like the role of charge nurse down there because I get to interact with everyone on a day-to-day basis, even if it's for short periods of time. But I'm more involved with my staff than I am with the patients. Whereas if I'm acting as a pre-op nurse or procedural nurse, I can interact with the patient still, but I get a little bit of everything.
Is there one charge for both the procedural areas and pre-op and PACU?
So we do have permanent charges in each of those roles. And then I'm a relief charge. So I get to fill in when those charges aren't there, which I actually really love because then I get to work in all the areas versus committing to one specific area.
Okay. So there's floating, but like in one shift, will you have like 2 or 3 charge nurses, or will you just have
we have multiple.
Nurse?
So there's one we'll have typically 4 a day, which is a lot. But with the 80 patients we typically see, that's like, you need that to run efficiently. We have about, I want to say like 50 staffed nurses. In therapeutic area, we'll typically have anywhere from 2 to 8 nurses in that area. Same with our luminal area. And then pre-post, we typically have about 14. So in a given day, you have a ton of staff, like close to 30 staff that you're trying to help coordinate things. So it's really helpful to also have the additional charge nurses to go to if you're not sure what to do. Yeah.
I remember I did endoscopy for like 3-4 months as a traveler. And I remember, I had just so much respect for the charge nurse because we had maybe 6 rooms going at one time, but it was like trying to figure out where the anesthesiologist is going to go, like what nurse is going to go. Like, I think the nurses and the techs maybe stayed in the same room, but then sometimes something would get flipped and then you had to change things around, or like, this inpatient, you just stick the inpatient wherever, you have space, or it seemed like such a complicated, they were like playing Tetris with patients on the screen.
Well, it's interesting too, because we have a lot of equipment, and so equipment malfunctions all the time. So then people will go to their chargers and be like, what do I do? And so just being able to tackle that too. But it's funny because like some of it, I'm like, okay, that's easy. I can figure that out. Other times, you just need to know your resources, who to call to help you figure it out. But if the patient's on the table under anesthesia during their procedure and something malfunctions, like you have to have like your plan B ready to go. So we've had to switch procedure rooms in the middle of cases occasionally. That's not ideal, but you have your attending, you have your fellow, you have 2 nurses, you have anesthesia. Sometimes anesthesia is teaching someone. So you have a lot of bodies to help you when that arises. It's just like the switching a room when someone's under anesthesia is like definitely not ideal.
It's just not what it's just not what you want.
Correct. Yeah. It's not what the patient wants. It's not what the staff want, but we have had to do it. Just one of our physicians does laser equipment, which is really cool, but they use this really small fiber optic laser to go into their pancreatic ducts and break up stones. So he has his endoscopy scope, but within the scope is another scope with like a very small camera that goes up into the duct. And then through that baby scope is a fiber optic wire. So there's so much equipment involved in that said procedure. Like things aren't always going to work out well. Right. So in that instance, we have had to switch rooms before. It seems like the fiber optic can sometimes overheat, or I don't know, the power source is different from any other power source we use for other equipment. So sometimes just changing that device to a different room, it will work properly. But at that point in time, you have to move the patient to another room, which is a lot of work, especially when they're under general anesthesia.